I was raised that I was expected and could do anything that anybody else could do. And I love that. Sometimes it does frustrate me that we even have to talk about women in leadership and women in business, because the fact that we have to talk about it as a category means that we don't have true equality, and that's disturbing to me.
Leadership is everywhere. In our work, in our family, in our community. We see leaders by their actions. We know their legacy. This podcast is about leaders, people just like you, doing amazing things every day. I hope these stories inspire you, they motivate you, and they fuel your leadership legacy. My name is Vicki Guy. Welcome to Ignite. Hi, and welcome to Ignite. Today we'll tackle culture in the workplace. We all know how we feel when we work in an environment that has a very strong culture. We can feel inspired and motivated, or we can be left feeling very deflated. If you have ever been wondering what it takes to build a strong culture around you in the workplace, our guest today will not let you down. Betsy Pepine, the owner of Pepine Realty, talks with us about the important pillars in our life that shape the culture of our work. Pepine Realty has been recognized in 2018 as an Inc. 5000 fastest growing private company in the United States, a 2018 Florida Trends Best Companies to Work For, and has been ranked in the top 250 teams in the USA by the Wall Street Journal 2 years in a row. You will not want to miss this interview with Betsy right after this break.
My name is Dana Morrison. I'm the IT director at Grace Christian School in Raleigh, North Carolina. IT directors often hoard so much knowledge that it's hard for their team members to learn. IT Pro TV has given us the ability to level up our technicians to a point where they can decide, this is important for me to learn. I would recommend IT Pro TV to any IT team. It's just a great tool for any IT professional.
Welcome back to Ignite. We're here today with Betsy Pepine. She is the broker owner of Pepine Realty. Betsy, welcome.
Thank you, Vicki.
So glad for you to be here today and sharing some of your stories with us and to everybody that's listening here on Ignite. And you have seen some really great success over the last few years. And I know that probably did not happen, again, overnight. It was a lot of work, probably a lot of sweat, some tears, some struggles along the way. Tell us a little bit about your company and what you're currently doing.
Sure. I'm the broker owner of a real estate company called Pepine Realty. Our main office is in Gainesville, Florida, and we have 3 other offices in Florida, in Orlando, Ocala, and St. Augustine. I started the company in 2010, and we hover between 60 and 70 agents at any one time. We do commercial and residential real estate, property management, leasing, development, and title work.
Okay. So it sounds like it's a pretty all-encompassing realty organization. You have a lot of people that are part of your team. And you mentioned that you started this in 2010. Is that right?
Yes.
The broker.
Yes.
Okay. So 2010 was an interesting year because we had just come off of some challenges in the market. Tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate.
Well, that's an interesting story, actually. I've always had a passion for housing and grew up, loved going to construction sites and watching developments being built. But what really sparked my interest was when I was in graduate school. I was going to school to get an MBA, and oddly enough, in the curriculum, you could take a class where you would go into homes in West Philadelphia and gut them out, and you donate your time, and we had sponsors that donated materials, and we got to rebuild these homes. And then we interviewed and had families at risk apply to purchase these homes at a very discounted rate, basically at the cost of what it cost us to produce, which was very nominal. And so to be able to see how a home can transform a family and really impact the trajectory of that family was something that I never forgot. So even though I didn't get into real estate right after business school, it is something that I found my way back to in 2006.
So what did you go into? You said you didn't go right into real estate. What was your step, and then how did you make it back into real estate?
Yeah, so I came from a family of healthcare practitioners, and so there was definitely a pressure for me to be a physician. And so I was pre-med, had worked a lot in hospitals during and before college, and then in college and shortly after had worked in pharmaceutical companies. So when I got my MBA, I got a concentration in healthcare management, and I went into the pharmaceutical industry because I realized that I really didn't want to be a practicing physician, but wanted to stay in the healthcare field. And so I went into pharmaceutical marketing, and it was actually a very exciting time for somebody like me who has a passion for marketing, because it was the advent of direct to consumer advertising for pharmaceutical products. And so to be on the forefront of that and to help develop the ad creation of things that you see on television and on radio and in magazines now was something that I got to be a part of in the early 90s.
That was certainly a big transition in that market, and I know made a huge difference in just how companies in general are marketing today. That direct-to-consumer advertising, especially in healthcare, made a big splash. How long did you do that for? What was that? What was that like?
I did that for about 8 years, and then I actually went through a divorce. My children were 1 and 2, and I was in the Northeast, and being a single mom with two very young children, my children were 1 and 2 years old, I really didn't feel like I could keep the job that I had with the lack of support I had for childcare up in the Northeast. And so in 2001, I made the decision to move home to Gainesville, which is where I was raised and where my parents were, for the familial support, and opened up my own consulting practice, again, still in the pharmaceutical industry, utilizing the contacts that I had made in the last decade while I was living in the Northeast. So I did that for several years. But it was getting harder and harder for me as the children got older and they started entering elementary school. I knew I wanted to be a part of the classroom setting. I wanted to be participatory in the school plays and the student affairs. And so I felt that I really needed to make a career change to be able to be a part of their day-to-day lives when they were in school. And made the decision, had saved money and made the decision to go into real estate, in large part because I had had such a phenomenal experience at business school and seeing how I could make a difference in people's housing. And so I ventured into real estate in 2006 and gave myself 2 years. I said, I've got 2 years of a savings that we could live on. If I fell flat on my face, it would be fine. I would just go back into, we have a large healthcare system here, and my plan B was to go into a marketing field in the healthcare system here in Gainesville. Fortunately, I didn't have to go to plan B. I fell in love with real estate even more so than I thought I would, and really just haven't looked back. I've just really enjoyed every aspect of real estate, and so much so that we continue to expand the services that we offer to our clients because it's just been such a rewarding field for us.
I'm glad you didn't have to go to Plan B because Plan A has worked out well for you. But I want to go back a little bit and talk about that transition. You said that you were in the Northeast and you made that move. You were a single mom. I know I talked to a lot of women who are trying to balance kind of that career and family. How did you do that? How did you make that, find that balance and then also make such a huge transition in your career at the same time?
It was the scariest time of my life. I had read, when we decided to get divorced, I read a ton of books on how to best make a divorce as a happy thing for the children as possible. And I did everything the opposite of what those books tell you to do. They tell you not to change anything in your life except for the divorce. So keep your job, keep your house, or keep at least the city in which you live, keep the same set of friends and social network. And I really just felt strongly in my heart that wasn't the best thing for me, because I just couldn't envision myself being able to keep those things in place when I was no longer married. And so it was really a leap of faith. I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and when a door closes, like a marriage, I think two doors open. And I really thought this is probably my opportunity to make a move. Um, and so I did, and it really helps to have the support of a very strong family. I come from a very close-knit family who embraced me, and so it was much easier to make that move than perhaps some other if I was in another situation.
Mhm. I imagine that at some point, in some way, that experience plays a role in how you work with your teams today, with your own company.
Oh, very much so. One of our core values is family. And when I interview candidates, to me, family is not just your biological family. It's your work family. It's your spiritual family. It's your clients and your customers that you become family with. And I tell them all the time, we never want this job to come before family. We at our company embrace we call it the wheel of life. We ask agents to pick 8 to 10 life pillars. And a life pillar could be your health, your finances, your relationships, your marriage, your career. Career is only one of those 8 to 10 life pillars that we have to create a balanced life. And so it's very important to us, and myself in particular, to make sure that my agents keep a balanced life and to make sure that their family understands the importance of them in their lives and are never taken for granted. So yeah, it's made a huge impact having to go through that. And we do have this profession for a variety of reasons, is very attractive to people who have gone through a difficult period in their lives. When you look at real estate, and I didn't really understand this before I got into it, real estate is not a first career for almost everybody. Most everybody that goes into real estate, it's at least their second, if not third or fourth career. It's generally not something you go into right when you graduate from college. And so a lot of people do have life experience under their belt and have gone through some pretty difficult times before getting into our profession.
Is that how you created these pillars? Did you kind of crowdsource that with your team, or how did you come up with them?
Um, the pillars, not so much. When I did a lot of soul searching after I went through my divorce and just learned a lot about how to get back on track. And I remember a gentleman telling me about a three-legged stool. And, a lot of people have their family um, or their children, their marriage, their job. Hopefully also maybe a spiritual component, however people define spirit. But on a three-legged stool and one goes out, it's hard to stay sitting. And so I started doing a lot of research into how to make sure that my life is more balanced, because I did feel like a rug had been pulled out from under me and I did not have enough life pillars that I supported at the time that I got divorced. And so that's where the life pillars came in. And that's something that I've seen in a variety of different life management books. But the values in our company, those were definitely homegrown. And we take a pulse once a year with our company, and we as a team decide what our team values are going to be and what we want to live by and be accountable for. And so those team values do play and play a role and interlink with those life pillars. Every January, we just did this last week at our team meeting, we have everybody do a vision board, and we have the wheel of life, and they identify their 8 to 10 life pillars, and we ask everybody to create a goal in each of those life pillars. And it's probably the most fun team meeting we have, because every January we get to share with people what we get to take off of our vision board because we've manifested it in our lives, and then we put on new things that we'd like to see come to fruition in our future.
Mm. Those exercises, sometimes people, when you tell them about those exercises, they kind of balk at them like, oh, vision boards, whatever. But you see the power of them, and you've been able to see them implement in people's lives and make changes. What has that transformation looked like for you or for your team? And is there anything that comes to mind that you've seen as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is truly life-changing. I think another life-changing thing that we encourage our agents to do is keep a gratitude journal where you write 10 things a day that you're grateful for. And people balk at that too and think that it perhaps isn't a necessary exercise, but it really does start to change the way you view the world. So a couple of years ago, I taught the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace class. It's a 8 or 10 week program, and we purchased it, and I taught the class to our agents. And probably about 6 months ago, one of my youngest agents came up to me beaming and said that he was now debt free as a result of what he learned from that class. And
Wow.
and I've got tears in my eyes because he's now 23 22, 23, and to become debt free and to feel that sense of freedom that you have when you're debt free, it's incredible. And to feel like our company was a part of that change in him, that's why I do what I do, to be able to be a change agent for people.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So,
Very
yeah.
cool. So creating this infrastructure has, certainly happened over time, but I want to go back a little bit, change gears just a tad, and talk a little bit more about when you entered into the real estate market. You said you started in 2006, I think.
6, yeah.
And again, shortly after, I alluded to this earlier, but then in 2008, we had, some devastation in the market, and real estate was not where it had been, right? And it's come back a bit, but there were some rocky years. How did you navigate through that?
Yeah, it's funny. Everybody thought I was insane, and so I got into real estate in 2006, and then in 2010, I went out on my own, and everybody. I mean, I can't tell you how many people thought this was just a ludicrous idea of mine because the market was at an all-time low. But I've never been one, and it's not right or wrong, but I've never been one to actually look at the external world to make my decisions. And so I didn't go into real estate in 2006 when it was at a peak because I thought the prices were high. And it was a long-term commitment for myself. And so I had no intention of exiting the market when the market tanked. Now, that's very different than a lot of people when they get into real estate. Right now, we've got about 1,300 agents in our county. When the real estate market is low, we go to about 600. So we more than double when the market is appreciating. But those are people who are trying to time the market. And even in my stock market portfolio, I don't try to time the market. I'm a very consistent investor. And so in 2010, it didn't bother me that we were at the bottom. I knew what I loved to do. I knew what I was passionate about. And I felt like I could make a go out of it on my own. I didn't at the time have any intention of building a company. I just knew that I perform better being able to be the manager of my own decisions, and I'm rather impatient. And so when I want to implement an idea, I don't want to have to go through several layers of the corporate chain to get approval for a new idea. I like to implement it. And so that was really my reasoning for wanting to go out on my own, just having more control of the process and more control of what I'm able to do creatively. I worked out of my house for several years. In fact, 3.5 years ago, we were still working out of my home. Again, this wasn't a plan. What happened was I hired an assistant, and slowly an agent here or there would ask if they could join me. And I said, sure. Didn't really think anything of it because you're an independent contractor when you're a real estate agent. So it wasn't really like they were an employee of mine. And they were all working out of my house. And then about 3.5 years ago, I turned around and I've got people everywhere, my dogs, my children, and it was getting a little crazy. And I was smart enough to get a coach, and he's like, Betsy, you need to go big or go home. And I'm like, I already am home.
I'm going big.
I said, I'm going big. And so that's what we did is I went out and bought office space and really then created a strategy to grow and to really make this a viable company. So,
what's so interesting is that you said that, you had no intention of building this company. You wanted to be your own boss and wanted to create your own space and do, make the decisions for yourself. And somewhere along the way, it grew organically. And, sometimes when I talk to people that have built companies, whether they're large companies, small companies, or anywhere in between, one of the things that they tell me is that there's a lot of intent that goes into the start. But I think what I love about what you're sharing is how it happened without you really trying too hard to make it fit, which is probably why it's grown so quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can think of during that transition? You were all of a sudden working with a coach. He said, go big or go home. And you said, I'm going to go big. But did you feel like you had what it took at that point in time to grow your organization to what it is today?
I don't That's a great question. I don't think I thought that far ahead. I take things in baby steps, and so I always knew I could do the next step. I probably would have been intimidated if you had told me 3.5 years ago, okay, Betsy, you have to get to this today. But I did it so incrementally, and I had the support of a great mentor and a coach, and so I never did question if I could do it, because I think it was just broken down in so many fine pieces that I knew I could make it to the next step.
So is that how you go about goal setting, or is there any insight that you can give us about how do you set goals for moving forward, whether it's in your professional life or in your personal life?
Yeah, so it's very intentional. I've set goals since I was probably 10. It was just something that I like to do. It started out being New Year's resolutions, and then progressed into more formal goal setting, both in my personal and professional life. And I do what I ask my agents to do, is set goals in each of those life pillars, usually at the beginning of the year. And then usually at least once a month, I evaluate personally and professionally where I am on those goals. In the workplace, we have goal setting every year, usually in November. And this is a sales profession, and so it's usually it's a numbers goal. And then we also, for the career side, but I also encourage them to do development goals, because I want them to continue to grow and to learn. And so most agents also have some type of designation that they're working towards, or some type of certification that they're trying to get, to create more knowledge and specialty and services that they can offer to their clients. But we then have a sales manager as well as a mentor for each agent, and they break those goals down into just chunk it down. And so it becomes a weekly goal and a monthly goal. And so they know at any one time where they are. I think sometimes I talk to new agents or prospective agents, and they're scared about the income invariability in this field. And it's actually not at all. As long as you do your goal setting and you follow the tasks you need to follow, your income is very steady. It's just whether you can keep yourself motivated and consistent enough in following those behaviors. So the goals are critical to us, and accountability is one of our other core values, and keeping people accountable to what they say and do, not only in their in ethics and behaviors, but also in their numbers and what they say they want to do. I think the most important thing we do inside is we want to make sure we understand what the agent's why is. They tell us they want to make these goals, but what's really more important to us is, why is it that this is their goal? So you don't come up to an agent and say, oh, how are your numbers this week? You say, how's that trip to Hawaii coming along? And if that, that's going to be the motivation to spark them, not a number on a paper.
Yeah, and it makes it more manageable too, to chunk it down, make it tangible, and also that, I would imagine, keeps people from getting a bit overwhelmed at times as well. Because as you said before, if you think too far ahead and you don't break it down, it can be a little bit scary, right? So really breaking it down into some tangible things that we can control is definitely helpful in that goal setting. You mentioned motivation and finding that why for your agents. What else do you do with your team to build that motivation? Because real estate it does ebb and flow, and I can imagine that some people on the team might feel, with those goals even, might sometimes feel a little bit discouraged or really enthusiastic, and I don't know how they maintain that all year round. Is there anything that you do in particular to help them maintain that motivation throughout the year?
We do a couple of things. I think one of the best things that we implemented several years ago, it's been a part of our culture for a long time, is every Monday we come in and we share every mistake we made over the last week. And in real estate, because no transaction is identical, I still to this day learn something new in real estate every day, which is unbelievable to me, because I can't say that about other jobs that I have or other industries I've been in. But literally, because every transaction has some minor tweak that makes it different than everything else. And so, especially as a new agent, it can be very frustrating as well as intimidating, because you feel like you're almost like this ping pong ball making these mistakes, and the industry is not that receptive to brand new agents. And so it can be very discouraging. And so every Monday we get together as a group, and myself included, share every mistake we made over the last week, and we call them learnings. They're not failures, they're not mistakes, whether they're called learnings. And it's really been eye-opening. I mean, the agents have said they feel so embraced and so a sense of trust, because we're not out. We know you're going to make mistakes. We want to prevent repeat mistakes, and we want to make sure that all the agents hear all of our mistakes so that they don't make those same mistakes. So I think that has helped people keep from getting discouraged, especially at the beginning. But then in terms of even motivating more is, we do the contests. We're always trying to run a contest that will help people. And we don't just include the sales professionals. We have the staff get involved too, because they are absolutely instrumental in making the sales process work. And so when we run contests, they're also eligible to participate in those. And we do a tremendous amount of team building. Several years ago, I made the conscious decision to, I'm hesitate to even admit it, but to be less focused on numbers, but much more focused on the culture inside the company. And it happened shortly after we started, or my decision to go big or go home, because I had my assistant, who I alluded to, she was my very first hire, left the company. And I was very caught off guard and surprised and hurt and frustrated. And it was the day before I was going to go on a cruise, which had been my first vacation in a long time. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I spent the cruise reading everything I could on culture and companies that you think of, the iconic companies that you think of that have great cultures, and what did they do to create that in their company. And I came back and we implemented so many things as a result of that cruise. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, the woman who resigned, because it was really eye-opening to me to understand what I had failed to do and make sure that her needs were being met. So we made a lot of changes, and one of those was a really key focus on culture, and have created a lot of internal groups that make them more empowered in the company and in the company's decisions. And it's really been life-changing for me as a person, and I think it's really helped, or it's really responsible for the growth that we've seen in our own company.
I bet when you planned that cruise, you had no idea the impact that cruise would have on the rest of your career, right?
I really didn't.
Yeah.
No, it was, I'm so glad it happened now. At the time, it was quite stressful.
Yeah. And it was not a relaxing cruise, because you read the whole time on this culture. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad you did that, because it's clearly paid off. And one of the things that you've shared with me is about the importance of community involvement as part of the culture of your team. How does that fit into the culture?
Oh, it's key to our culture. So when we are interviewing potential staff and agents, we look for a service heart. And if they don't have, it's not a requirement, but if they don't have a service heart, they probably aren't going to feel like they fit in. At least once a month, we do a group activity in the community. We donate a lot of money, but I also want to make sure that people are invested time-wise in the community. And so we solicit ideas from all of our agents and staff as to what they're passionate about. So for example, I'm passionate about the homelessness. And so we feed the folks at St. Francis House, we feed the folks in Grace Marketplace. We stuff backpacks for children at risk, and they go home on long vacations with backpacks full of food through the school services. But we ask all the agents what they're passionate about, because we don't want to just do service and make an impact in the areas that me, the CEO, is passionate about. We want to make sure that it's reflective of the company. And so, for example, one of our agents is an equestrian, and so we painted horse stalls for the retirement home for horses. We've been involved in pet rescue. We take every other week, we do a Meals on Wheels, and we deliver Meals on Wheels to the inbound. So we're constantly looking for ways that we can impact the community, but that's a passion to all of our agents. So it's very integral to our culture. So much so that we just created this month, we just got formal approval of our 501c3 nonprofit called Pepine Gives, and we're very excited to launch that this year. And we're going to be doing a lot more intensive work in the community through this nonprofit.
Hmm. And just for people that are listening, we are here today with Betsy Pepine. She's the broker owner of Pepine Realty. We're talking a little bit about community involvement and how it incorporates into the culture of Pepine Realty. You just mentioned a 501c3 that you've created. And one thing that struck me as really maybe different, many companies do a lot of community involvement. Many companies give back to a variety of ways. But what I just heard is that you target those areas that are passionate, that are interest of the agents that work with you. So It's not just a random, we think we're going to, work with this group or give to this area.
Mm-hmm.
You really make sure that it ties into the culture of the organization. How has that been received by the employees that work with your team?
Oh, they absolutely love it. I mean, one of the other things that we do is for every agent and staff, we will match $1,000 per year to the charity of their choice. And so to be able to double the impact that they're making is very significant. And I find that it's more valued, I think, oddly, in the younger you are, it seems like the more you're interested in that benefit, which is great, that we're raising we're bringing up a community, a generation of people that are outwardly minded and want to give back to their community. So it's been very nice. And in fact, we get a lot of agents coming to us wanting to work for us, not because of our sales numbers, but because they see the impact that we're making in the community. And that to me is wonderful. One of the best reasons you could come and join us is if you want to make an impact.
Mm-hmm. And has that had an impact in other communities? You mentioned that you're not just in Gainesville, but you're in St. Augustine, Orlando, Ocala. Are you finding that the same thing is happening in those markets as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's universal. The desire to give back. I mean, it is in our culture, and fortunately, those offices are run by people who know and understand our culture, and so they understand the priority it is for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In addition to community involvement, I know that you spend a lot of time talking about women in leadership. You have, I think you have 2 daughters.
I do.
Yeah.
I do,
and
yes.
Obviously you have a lot of women that work for you with your organization. How have your experiences shaped your involvement in helping other women become leaders in their own space?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I have 2 daughters, and I come from a family of almost all women, oddly.
There's got to be a couple men in there somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my dad.
Yeah.
It's so strange because I was thinking about this the other day, and I mean, I'm one of 3 daughters. My mother was one of 3 daughters. My father was an only child, so I don't have any, biological uncles. I have aunts. All my cousins but one are male. All 3 of my sisters and I each had a girl. And then I had a second girl, and my twin sister did end up having 2 boys. But we had predominantly a strong female family. And my mother, who was a stay-at-home mom and was very instrumental in my upbringing, she was raised by a single mom because her father died at a very young age. And so her mom raised 3 children in the 1940s by herself and never remarried. And so I think that really helped me looking back, because I didn't feel I was raised that I was expected and could do anything that anybody else could do. And I love that. Sometimes it does frustrate me that we even have to talk about women in leadership and women in business, because the fact that we have to talk about it as a category means that we don't have true equality, and that's disturbing to me. I really do and am passionate about making sure that I am a role model and mentor to those that are coming behind me. So I am a mentor. I'm highly affiliated with the University of Florida, as well as their entrepreneurship and real estate program. And I have people that I am a mentor for, the women that are coming up through those ranks and asking for and wanting a female role model. We meet monthly and help them and encourage them and give them direction on how they can move their business forward. So I feel an obligation to my gender to make sure that they are progressing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a heavy load to carry, right? And giving back to the community through mentorship is a great thing to do, especially when you feel that it's, you've got something valuable to share, which you obviously do. So I'm wondering, for those people that are listening, and we've talked a lot about your career transition, the community involvement, helping other women specifically in leadership roles or in the real estate area. Is there one or two things that you could say that really helps embody leadership in somebody when you're hiring somebody to be on your team, or you are working with somebody? Is there something that you see in others that you think describes their leadership capability?
Yeah, I think number one, and it's a question that we don't directly ask, but we are looking for indications of, is to what extent are you coachable? If you are not coachable, it is very difficult to, I think, make it. Some people are very receptive to getting feedback, even when it's presented in a constructive way. And that just doesn't work. I think the best leaders are ones that understand their strengths and weaknesses. They don't take it personally. They understand there's always opportunities for growth. And the extent to which you are coachable, I think, highly dictates the extent to which you are successful. The second thing that I think is very important is to have a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset. And we look for that. One of our core values in our company is growth. And if you're somebody that is very content with the status quo and you aren't constantly wanting to learn and grow and improve yourself, not just in your career, but just in your professional development, in your relationships, in your finances, that's not a good fit for us in our company. I'm not saying it could be a fit somewhere else, but for us, we are really looking for people that are coachable and also people that have a growth mindset. Those are the people that I see rise up through the ranks and become a leader in our profession.
How do those two aspects, how have they helped you in your career, being coachable and having a growth mindset?
Oh gosh, tremendously. One of the first things I did was get a coach, because I know one of my favorite expressions, although it's used all the time, is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people that have done what you want to do, and they've made mistakes and they've learned from those mistakes. And there's people out there that want to help you, and so why not utilize their expertise and learn from them, just like what I do with my own agents when we have the Monday brainstorming of what did we learn this past week. To be able to do that in a larger audience is instrumental. One of the first things I did, and I think it was key for me and my success, is to get out of my town. And so I sought role models and mentors and coaches that were not in my town. So I've got somebody in California, I've got somebody in New York City, where a lot of the trends come from. I think if you stay in your own little bubble, however you define it, you're putting limits on what you can do. And that's for being a broker of a company, I don't even look at our own numbers internally. I'm looking at numbers compared to what people are doing in the nation. I had a coach once tell me when I gave him my sales numbers, he's like, put a 0 in there. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I want you to put a 0 at the end. I'm like, you want me to 10x this? He's like, yeah. And that was just mind changing. It opens the way you think and the systems you have to take in place. And, you might not get there, but you'll get so much farther than if you had, kept yourself in your comfort zone. So having the growth mindset and being coachable is absolutely the core of why I'm where I am today.
Sounds like it's removed what might have been in your way as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Betsy, thank you so much for being here with us on Ignite. After a short break, we'll be back with some final thoughts.
Enjoying Ignite? Then you'll want to check out Technado, another podcast from the IT Pro TV network. In each episode, hosts Peter and Don recap the week's top tech news and interview IT experts from around the globe. Learn more at itpro.tv/podcasts.
So there it is. You, me, we all have the power to ignite the culture that we work in. It could be spending quality time, donating our time, or creating and encouraging others to set clear goals. Betsy gave us a lot of examples on how we can contribute to the culture that we work in, and as a result, find success along the way. Thank you for joining us today on Ignite. Please follow us at Ignite Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. From all of us here at Ignite, I'm Vicki Guy.